So it's a very warm welcome to Peter Dziuban to this traveling lighter. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, Peter, because your discourse on awareness, if you can call it a discourse, has really knocked me sideways in the past. I read Consciousness is All about 15 years ago,
Oh,
it's the only thing I've read that really knocked me sideways. But it was so blindingly obvious what you're pointing to.
hmm.
Um, that I find it, and I'm not saying that I remained in that awareness, uh, but I'm fascinated by what why we're so resistant to it. What's happened to us? So that I'm just to start you off, I'm just putting that out there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a good question, especially these days.
Yeah.
This may not seem to be much help at first, but actually, you are not maybe I can't remember exactly how that was worded, but it's funny. The words do get important. Um, it's not you that's resisting it. It is you. No choice. And
Mm.
just also maybe for the duration of this talk, let's try to keep it. I'll sort of try to stay aware to keep it experiential too, as a lived thing rather than merely knowing about it accurately. An
Mm.
experienced thing without words. So two big pieces of that are though, as a start, are number one, no person is personally being conscious, even though it sure seems we are conditioned that way through education, so-called from birth and all that. It's me that's being conscious, and now I'm going to turn my consciousness to the greater consciousness as I learn more about spirituality and so on. Yet, when it's flipped around, the perspective is flipped around, and it's really self-obvious. Okay, consciousness is present right now. Otherwise, there'd be no consciousness of this conversation. And yet, that's not something that I, Peter, or Iwan, is personally maintaining or sustaining by doing anything mentally or keeping my finger on a button somewhere. None of that. It just is. And so that being the fact, being the changeless fact, then there actually, sounds strange, really isn't another that can keep its attention on it or not. Consciousness is it. And just as we're talking, feel the under the words, which are sort of floating by on the surface, there's this rock solid, so to speak, beingness that just is not going anywhere. It's not, we can say, I'm aware right now. Try to get rid of awareness right now. And it can't, it's impossible. So, what seems to be happening then in what we experience? It's as if there is this other lesser state, a mental state where all the movement, all the activity goes on, whether it's physical movement, mental movement of thoughts, emotional movement, even energetic movement, always in movement, always changing, in flux. All of those sayings. The only thing that you can be sure of is that there's nothing you can be sure of. It's always going to change, et cetera. All that's from the human or the time-based point of view. Everything about the human, the mortal, is time. Mortal means time, really, or temporal. And it's always changing. And of course, seemingly, we've been taught to identify with that or even as that. And that's never been what you are, or better said, it's never been that which is being itself right where you are or where I am, which is the ever present consciousness. And so it doesn't have to be a thing of I personally have to be better at somehow mentally or energetically gluing myself to the isness, but just know that it can't not be. And that might not seem like it's doing anything, but actually that's a huge first step in it. And the next thing is to sort of and I do this constantly all day long. You sort of catch yourself. Oh, there's mental movement running away. Thoughts are going here, there, yesterday. Oh, what's the talk going to be like later this morning on the podcast? You know, all those things. Bing, 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 bing. All the while, and that's sort of being out with what's going on the surface instead of back just resting within as that which can't not be. And it's the human mind is shocked, but when one is coming from this unattached, unworried, fresh beingness, everything in the picture seems to go more harmoniously. Anyway, because there's our thoughts, concerns, worries. That's emotion. That's a frequency, certain vibration of a certain type that we're putting into the mix of phenomena. And so that's going to be reflected in, a sort of to some extent, disharmonious picture. And a lot of people that I talk with, they'll say, but okay, I get it with the isness, but what's it going to do? How's it going to help me? It doesn't do anything. And that's certainly a valid issue, but actually one isn't not doing anything. You're consciously sort of very busy, meaning alert as present aliveness. It's we can get into this later too, maybe. Rather than attention constantly going with the movement of thought, it's kind of an attention thing. It's really not legitimate to say that either, but seems to be. When attention is on, not on thought, but on presence, which isn't a nothing, it's a very alive experience, so to speak. Experience is even not perfectly right, but it's not a deadness. It's not empty. It's alive and keenly so, acutely so. And as that, you realize, oh, when I'm here, when I'm being what's genuinely being me, being alive here, the one whose life this is, this calm isness, what's not going on? All the otherwise present Peter worries, concerns about this, concerns about that. Did I handle that right? Should I do this? What am I going to do about blah, blah? All that, that's not happening anymore. And therefore, its dissonance, if you want to say, or negative vibration of to some extent is not in the mix anymore. So the outer even experience seems to calm down because it's not having that particular dissonant frequency injected into it constantly.
Mm. One thing that is coming to my mind at the moment is how this awareness, this consciousness, the word mysterious comes up. But when I recall reading your book and the kind of blind, and we keep using this word, blindingly obviousness of it,
Mm.
it didn't feel mysterious at all.
Sure. Yeah. To the mind, it is. It's because it's not graspable.
Yeah.
It's not because it's not a form. And the mind deals 100% in form. Thought
Mm.
forms, emotional forms, anger, happiness. It's a vibe too of a certain type of color, if you will. And awareness has none of that. And yet, you see, as that experience was had there
Mm.
by you, it was really awareness. The one that is that was was experiencing itself, for want of a better way of saying it. And so it's going, duh. This is what's this is what's here all the time. You know?
Yeah.
It's funny, and I do that. That happens all the time. You're always busting yourself, but you're really not. What you're doing is busting the false sense of the self that
Yeah.
comes in as the personality.
Yeah. Well, why is it blind? Why are we blind to it? I mean, you've probably explained to it, but it's not only that we're
It's
blind.
not objective. The mind is used to something objective to itself.
Mm.
That book that I read about painting or whatever, you got a very specific thing you can point to. I know about that book and all the pages and all the techniques in it, or that recipe book, that cooking video that I saw, or with very specific form, and the mind can latch onto
Mm.
it. And this is not latchable. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the beauty of it, really, because that's the infinity of it. And the freedom, the limitlessness of it. And eventually the mind, even to some extent, gets that after a while. And it goes, oh yeah, right, of course,
Mm.
kind of thing.
But this my labeling it as mysterious is still a kind of distancing effect, isn't it? It's just trying to.
And it's dual. There's the me here who's looking upon it as mysterious. That's
Mm.
just another phase of the mind. What happens too a lot, I'm sure you've experienced this too, is it seems we're at one level in our path, of which there's none really, but in so-called progressing along, it's all from the human point of view, things are false beliefs that we bought into, maybe from conditioning or whatever. They're exposed, and they know we no longer take them as real. We no longer accept them. We no longer let them dictate things in our life. And so it doesn't get any conscious airtime from you anymore. And yet, because the minute we're attention wise out of the pure is, you go into this seemingly soup of sleep or dream or whatever. And there's all kinds of unimaginable types of stuff going on in there. And because what previously had found lodgment in one's awareness as this belief or that belief, that's no longer getting let in, something else will come and take its place. And that's what you busted those earlier beliefs, whatever you had before you got on the path, they're gone. So now this is mysterious thing. It comes in, you know. And even under the it'll come in under the guise of I now am much more spiritual than I was, so many years ago,
Mm.
or all those things. So it seems often as like we're busting one thing after another. No, 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 not anymore. No, 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 not anymore. No, thank you. You know,
Mm. In Simply Notice, you talk about the person 3,000 years, or in the year 3000, and you talk about kind of the Copernican revolution, and how maybe, or I don't know if it was just a metaphor or whether you think there will be a by the year 3000, there will be this awareness that awareness is the center and not the self or the identity or um, do you have a sense of that happening?
Yeah. I can't put a date on it really. That was just to make a, contrast in the book, in the writing of the book.
Mm,
But it has to be because it's already the fact.
mm,
It's already here. It doesn't have to be made to be so. It can't be usurped or pushed out because if it did, existence would there'd be nothing. And if anything, it's seen. And again, uh, Joel Goldsmith is one. If you're familiar with a teaching called the Infinite Way.
no, I don't know it. No.
Oh, okay. You might, it's all
Mm,
over online, even though it's
mm,
not advertised or anything. But he was on the scene in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. And that's
mm,
one of the highest things I've ever come across. And he, one point that he emphasized a lot is that the tendency is to think that I personally got myself on the spiritual path.
mm,
And he said, no, 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 no. Everything that's happening in your experience, spiritual wise, let's say, is thanks to that consciousness that is, in fact, omnipresent, ever present, only is what is present. And where that is realized, nothing else can operate.
mm,
Because only it truly is, genuinely is. And so it's not going to be a progressing of a human state to this eventual realm. It's going to be a complete sort of fading out of the just a belief that there ever has been or could be separation. Boy, does this seem like real solid stuff right now, but it's really like a mental mist
mm,
and like a fog because it can be shown. Even physics today is so onto that there's nothing solid or fixed or material anywhere. And again, as the abiding gets deeper and deeper, and there's less ignoring of it with attention, um, the other has to fall and just dissolve, like the mist does when, the old metaphor, when the sun is up. The sun never attacks the mist. It's just being the sun, and the mist can't maintain itself in the light. Uh, One thing that just comes to my thought too in this regard right now is that only consciousness, being, the timeless, the now, the eternal now, life, this is where life is, actually the actual aliveness, the actual one being alive, only it has genuine, true presence. It's the only real presence, if I can use that word. And everything that seems to be experienced in time is a pseudo presence, a temporary presence, a wannabe presence, but not genuine presence. And when presence is 100% sort of self-attentive, which it actually is even right this instant, it can't avoid itself. But seems that that's what is happening. But when it's self-attentive, nothing else can be present, and that's the dissolution of all the ignorance, all the birth, death, all the things that go with mortality, suffering,
mm.
separation, so on.
Yeah. I think one of the most pernicious conditioning is this idea called, in psychology called the theory of mind, which is that I have a mind, and because I have a mind, there must be a mind in you as well, and we can communicate. And maybe it's in human evolution, it was imperative for us to develop this to be social animals. But
And that's certainly how it appears on the level of the physical senses,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So if there are other people and other people's minds, then there's also a kind of elsewhere, if you know what I mean, to this. So there's this constant projecting of elsewhere. And
Yes, yes.
yeah,
But is it really elsewhere when it's examined from the standpoint of that which is actually conscious and present?
hmm,
It's just a thought.
yeah. So again, my mind goes to the tree that falls in the forest and nobody sees it. Does it actually make a sound? There's nobody there to, that all those theories of elsewhere, you know what I mean, that keep reinforcing the idea um, of something that is not awareness, that is not, or something I'm
Hmm.
not aware of.
Hmm.
It's a very powerful story.
Yeah. And it seems to self-perpetuate when it's not known that there's an alternative. But
Yeah.
when there is, then it just sort of I mean, for a long time, I used to feel like I had to battle and work my way out of it and uh, do all these things. And that just kept the sense of a secondary self alive, really. I had made some progress and I was getting there, but still a long ways to go. And who knows, all those things. And then somewhere along the line, even that sort of fell away. And now it's like, in not Peter, but infinite intelligence, which is just another word for awareness, present awareness or being. It's not fooled by anything because there's only itself. And so things like all these would-be suggestions of otherness just don't get accepted. That doesn't stop them immediately from showing up at the door, but at least they don't take root as some type of belief or behavior.
Hmm. I don't know if it's at all useful to talk about this, but what for you was it a gradual or an explosion or what kind of
There
how
was
did
one,
Mhm.
I'd say, in retrospect, most significant moment. And again, this is all with the qualifier that we're speaking sort of hypothetically now, because none of this, again, that's always just always got to be the premise. It's consciousness is conscious, life's life, it's at itself, it's complete, it's whole right now. It does not experience time or progression to itself. Done, done, done. And then, okay, that being clear, then we can talk about other stuff in a very different way than if we believed it was really a genuine state of something. But so now let's make up a little story right now.
Okay.
Um, Peter, once upon a time, Peter was on the path and he was very sincere in reading all these books, some of which were the Infinite Way materials of Joel Goldsmith that I mentioned.
Mm,
And then through a friend, I heard about something called, at the time, it was called absolute reality. And it's also maybe better known by infinite reality. Absolute is a term that's got a lot of stuff associated with it, like all of them, really.
right.
Yeah. But Uh, and it was some books by a man named Alfred Aiken.
Oh
And
yes, I've heard of him. Yeah.
yes, and a friend told me about it, and just I think it was at the time the word, yes, it's on the absolute. And that just stuck. And it wouldn't go away. But at the time, I didn't have the presence of mind to say, hey, you got to do something about this and look into this. It took a while for that, but it just sort of kept dinging back there a little bit. Says, okay. So I finally, through a friend, this is back in the mid 1980s, uh, had a friend that owned a spiritual bookstore and way across the country, no internet in those days. And I mentioned the name and she said, yes, I think I've seen those before or something. She said, let me see what I can come up with. So shortly after, I was sent a copy of a book, That Which Is. That was the title by Alfred Aiken. And I started reading it right away. And in the first chapter, there was a line, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was to the effect of reality, truth is not a matter of looking up to a God. Let us begin by looking out from God. And it was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. Of course, what else is it going to do since it's all the life? Things like God or consciousness with the capital C or infinite intelligence, all those words. It was clear, at least, that that's the big one. That's the one. And I'm not doing that, but that's what seems to be functioning in this life here. But there was still this very sincere me who was getting there and getting clarity. And as soon as I persist, I'll get there. But it was still number two. And right with that statement there, something about it was just all that stopped instantly. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't continue to be unfoldment. There does. In fact, it even increases more, but it's all coming from a different place now. And that's so that was it. And there's another thing too, another piece to this that, even with something that what was for me profound, it still wasn't the whole thing yet. And what I realized actually, I think it was a couple of years after, was that, okay, that which is. Now, this book just nailed it. And Alfred Aiken, he nailed it. He was so clear. And if I keep working with this and, any other things that come along, I'll get there eventually and I'll be that clear. Even though right now I can say that the one, the self, is right here already anyway. But I still had this Aiken that had come up with it.
Mm.
And I don't even remember any of the details, but at one point it was like, wait a minute, that which is, just like let in, where does one have to be consciously to come up with that as the title for a book? It, to have those words come to oneself, you have to be being it at that time. You know what I mean? For that to make sense, for that to be, oh yeah, that which is there. It has to be that isness right there. They came up with those words, and that was the thing. It was like, oh my gosh, it's a state of consciousness, that the state of consciousness that eternally is. And it was clear, well, of course, it is that which is that wrote the book, That Which Is, not a person named Alfred Aiken. Just keep it all in consciousness. And it was that state of consciousness that came up with the title, and that book, the entirety of that book, which is incredible, and all of the enormous body of work that came after that. And uh, then it's like, whoa, and guess what? That which is, it's not in time, it's timeless, it's eternal. And so that which wrote the book, that which is that which is right here now as it's being read too. And there's no room for any middleman in that.
Yeah.
And the obviously this is ringing true at this very moment now. And to whom is it ringing true? That which is.
Mm.
Absolutely no effort whatsoever either. That's the beauty of it. It
Yeah.
can't make effort.
Yeah. I, as the kind of host of this podcast, I always find myself struggling to think, how can I make this last for an hour now? Because I just got, I don't, um, and that, yeah, it's the effort of sustaining it. You know what I mean? Which I would like to just,
When,
yeah,
when you say sustaining it, are you referring to the state of consciousness or just the content of the podcast?
with content of the podcast. Yeah.
Content of the podcast. I see. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that can be a lot of time to fill.
Mm.
Uh, what I find is that, and it's not me really, but it's infinite in what it can come up with.
Mm.
And as long as I stay out of the way, and just stay open, something always shows up.
Yeah. 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 It usually does. So this is where I hand over to Olia to see if she's got any questions. Oh, she's disappeared.
Okay. I have something we can get into, which is
Yeah, please do.
a little bit different, but I think the validity of it will be very clear. And get some water here. Would you say, would you agree that news is a big part of our experience today?
Absolutely. Yeah.
News, pretty big, right?
Yeah.
And when you and if this comes back to your thought later, you'll notice all these things will start happening. But of what does news consist? Broad terms. Okay, you've got the stuff on that we see on TV or hear on the radio, on the news networks, etc. Then you've got so all these kinds of news now available on the internet. So
Mm.
there's all that, official news with the politics, economy, social this, weather, all that kind of thing, everyday type news. Okay. Then actually, in one sense, every thought that shows up is a type of news because you're being informed. Isn't that what news is in a way? Being informed or made aware of, whether you like it or not.
Mm.
Sometimes it's like forced upon you.
Yeah. When it's not
So
propaganda, yes, I would say so.
yeah, that too. That's part of the regular news these days.
Yeah.
Now, and even things like bodily sensations are a type of news, and emotions are a type of news, right?
Mm.
And along with just because this goes with the way things are done in the human scene, the tendency is to accept that news as having happened, that it's genuine, real news, and it did happen at a previous time. That's why it's now being reported. And also, Um, things like, let's say, you get a twinge in your leg or something, or some kind of uncomfortable pain or feeling, or an unpleasant memory. That is another type of news that sort of intrudes itself, and we tend to accept it and accept it like it's ours. It belongs to us personally.
Hmm.
And now, just consider, go back to the to our premise here. Okay, who or what's being conscious or alive? Life with the capital L, or the self, capital S, consciousness, capital C, all those words, or the divine. Sometimes I like to say that just keeps it clean of all the mortal phenomena that seems to go on. So that's the one that is permanently present, all present, alone. Then from this perspective, isn't its own beingness the only kind of news there could be, so to speak? If there were, there really isn't even such a thing as news in the changeless divine. Because now we think of news in terms of things that are changing in the world. And in this sense, we're having to throw out a lot of the old definition here. But in the divine sense, news is pure consciousness being. There's
Hmm.
nothing else going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think, this course that I teach, Coming to Our Senses, and Olia's teaching it in Ukraine, we use the mirror as a metaphor. We have this illusion with the mirror, but that all the reflections in the mirror is all the appearances, but awareness is like the mirror. All the appearances, none of it affects the mirror at all. It's just
Right.
appearing in it. Would that be the right kind of?
Yes, in terms of the unaffectedness, yes, very
Yeah.
much so. Absolutely. Yeah. And in the deepest sense, truly, where there's only, this is not going to make any sense to the mind, but in the deepest sense, where there is only timeless being, there are no phenomena. So there's no appearance there. There's no reflection there.
Hmm.
So there isn't even that much that one has to be unattached to or unaffected by. There isn't anything else going on to either affect or not affect pure being. There's just itself.
Awareness, it like the mirror, is not even aware of it.
There you go. That's it. That's it. So that's where actually the word awareness breaks down sometimes in
Yeah.
consciousness too, because we tend to think instantly the mind goes to all the stuff we seem to be aware of rather than because the mind can't know awareness itself, but it can know the aware of stuff. So it goes right to that. And actually, that's not awareness. Have you nor I nor anyone so-called has ever seen visibly, whether optically or even mentally visibly as a concept? No one's ever seen consciousness itself. Agreed?
Agreed. They're looking for it in the brain, but they can't find it.
Right, right, exactly. And the reason it's not being found is because it's not seeable. But consciousness itself never appears as an objective form. Mind. Some people will argue that point, and I'll say, okay, go ahead and argue if you want, but just the very discussion of this with words taints it to some extent. But if you can just sort of, as consciousness, these words are not good, feel into that unobjective, just alive, unpin downableness that refuses to go away, too. But it's not a nothing. Otherwise, there'd be no awareness of being. But whatever that this is, from its perspective, because this is its life, it's all that is. It is all that is. There's only it and what it knows itself to be. And it's not an appearance. So if we say consciousness is all, same with being, being doesn't appear. Same with love. Love doesn't appear visibly. Love is all. It's not an appearance. So it's like saying, well, unappearingness is all. That which does not appear is all. So in the true sense, in the divine, there aren't appearances like we experience on the human level. There's just no phenomena there. And again, the mind is, probably freaking out big time right now when it hears things like that. But something deep within, as it were, is going, yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I come back to this because I think that I have immense compassion for and to the tragedy that there's this sense of trying to run away from it, trying to not resist, but because we went over that, but kind of seeking oblivion, seeking to you know, and there are people who succeed, obviously, either through drugs or through suicide or through um, but it's almost like the consciousness is too much.
Hmm. You mean, can you articulate that a little
Sure.
more?
Well, the sense of wanting to anesthetize ourselves,
Oh, yeah.
um, to not feel, um, which
Yes.
is, in a way is the same as saying to not be aware.
Like, is that another way of saying sort of the spiritual bypass? You hear that term sometimes?
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, but there's lots of other ways, isn't there? There's drugs and
Yeah.
there's sleeping a lot of the day, or even just
Yeah. Right.
ending it
Just
all.
not wanting
And,
to.
yeah, ending it all thinking that awareness will stop. You know what I mean?
Uh, the and I can't I know according to the what the senses report to us, the physical senses, that there certainly appears to be a lot of suffering and takes on all kinds of forms, like just like what you're referring to. And at that level, there doesn't seem to be an awareness of an alternative. So they go through whatever they seem to go through or try to escape. Yet it all comes back to, okay, here, it can be said this way. There's only one consciousness. And this is going to sound like double talk in so many ways, but in what seems to be your world, your universe, there's only the one consciousness. And if it's clear to that consciousness that it is all the presence and all the consciousness there is, then that has to be honored by that one. And here comes part of the double talk. Yet it seems like, according to the human picture, so many don't even, they would be going like, what are you talking about
Yeah.
right now? That's not even known to be an option. I can't, can't do anything about that. But what all I can do, I have to say it this way, is honor and be consistent with what's the highest so-called truth or way of living here that's known, and honor that, live consistent with that. And that is to do that is to inwardly hold on to, and Joel Goldsmith used to say, tenaciously sometimes, what in your awareness, in your heart, in your spirit, is the fact, even though the mind and senses are screaming to the contrary, that there's all this other going on. But he said, you have to be as tough as nails inwardly sometimes to maintain that integrity. And actually, the best way to do that is to know that it's not up to you personally. But anytime there's something really challenging going on in your experience, just stop for a moment and say, okay, no matter how you scream as loud as you want, try to make now not be now. I defy you to make now go away. I defy you to make consciousness not be conscious. I defy you to make existence not exist. And it cannot do that. It can't touch this pure beingness. So one, again, honors that. And who's really doing that? Consciousness, the self, the one, because it's the only one that can do that or be that. So it's here, then in what still appears to be everyday living, where there still appears to be a body that has to eat food like everybody else and breathe air and so on and so on, then you can do what appears to be the sensible, normal thing under the circumstances as a member of society. And that might include, some type of, he used the terms, I think it's maybe in the Bible somewhere, about offering the cool cup of water to the one that is in need of it at that time, which means whatever you have to do, whether it's volunteer your time at some place of homeless shelter or whatever it might be, donate clothing or money, or it can take all kinds of forms. So we do those things and then maintain the integrity that is clear to the actual fact.
Yeah. Being of service. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at, and I'm going to use kind of religious talk
Uh-huh.
about, is when we've replaced God with an idol, with this idea of a self, and then we don't like that self. We know we have a sense that it's not real or not true or fake, uh, but we've confused it with this awareness, and we can't get away from it. It's a bit like the tiger, Shere Khan in Jungle Book with the tail on fire. We can't get away. Exactly what you said. Awareness is inevitable, but we've just confused it with this self, and we want to switch it off. This, and I see that in people, and I find, I find it a terrible form of suffering in a way because of that confusion of a replacement of this divine awareness with the self.
Yeah, and it just intrudes whether you invited it or not. Most
Yeah.
of the time it intrudes uninvited, in fact. Yeah. I know I feel the same way too. That's goes on a lot. And this is just my 2 cents worth on this topic, but it seems to have intensified in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, with all this proliferation of devices and information, technical devices and information, and the speed with which it is disseminated and which it's taken in. And that whole package, as I was saying earlier, it's like, don't think of it in terms of um, metal devices and plastic like phones and uh, tablets and TV sets and things like that. Uh, but think of it all as energy. Even those at the one level, a material item is really energy.
Mm.
And something like a phone is like now a focal point for an incredible amount of energy of all types coming and
Mm.
going through that thing, whether it's the actual communication or if it's the so-called human thought energy, you're watching something on social media and it has an impact on you, and so on and so on. Think of that whole realm, not in terms of solid objects, but like an energetic soup or stew of some kind. And there's all types of frequencies and vibrations in that soup. And uh, this just the other day came to my thought, popped in out of nowhere. You know, just to make a little analogy, you know how sometimes you hear drinking stagnant water is not healthy because there could be stuff in it. You know, if you were out in the forest and there was a puddle there, but it had been there for some time, but you got a glass of water and it looked kind of clear, and something says, "Nah, maybe you shouldn't do that." And
Mm.
if you were to take that, suppose what appears on the surface to be clear water, if you were to take it home, look at it under a high-powered microscope, you'd go, "Oh my gosh, what the heck was I about to drink? All the creepy crawlies and stuff in there." But
Mm.
you don't see them. And when we let ourselves get pulled into this energy soup surrounding devices like my phone. Oh, let me scroll. I haven't scrolled since this morning. So let me just scroll. And you're just going through and you're going through and you're going through. Seems harmless, like that class, that like that cup of water. But what you don't see is all the other stuff that's there in that same package. You don't, it's subtle. You may not feel it at first, but it accumulates. And so the answer is honor yourself and that the just the impulse to pick up the phone and check this, check that is the soup, the stew functioning you rather than you're a puppet at that point. You know what I mean? And we're all I'm talking about this just because it's become so glaringly obvious in my own experience.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
the answer is enough is enough. And that's not Peter coming up with that. That's self. Says, look, there's no nonsense and utter insanity in my world,
Mm.
which often seems to be the case.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, for my 2 cents in terms of that, I think since the invention of the iPhone, the human brain has started to change because
Yeah.
there's a mode called default mode network, which is mind wandering, um, and self-referencing.
Mhm.
Uh, and the idea of mindfulness is to switch to experiencing mode. Um, but when I teach mindfulness, but when I teach it, I just noticed people hadn't had enough default mode network. So the moment they stop and they're not distracted, there's this just tsunami of default mode network saying I need to have
Yeah.
this time for my mind to wander. And young people are growing up without any of it, with no self-referencing whatsoever. So what's
Totally
accumulating?
manipulated by it.
Yeah. So
Entirely.
what's happening is all the kind of self-referencing that should happen is accumulating into this monster that they constantly one step ahead by distracting themselves. Um, yeah. So it's a scary proposition. Um, and the brain can't help it because the function of the brain on a biological level is to explore and exploit the environment. And while when I was young and or when before 2008, usually the when we talk about the environment, it was what we could see and hear in the room. But through
Mhm.
the phone is an infinite environment, a false infinity, but
Yeah,
it's just a constant, it's called infinity scrolling. So the brain doesn't know the difference between this environment and the outer one. So that the
right,
people scrolling never get to the end of exploring the environment where they can finally rest and feel safe.
right. Exactly. And then tomorrow it'll be the same thing all over again.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yes, been very quiet the whole time. I don't know if anything's come up for you that you'd like to share.
Um, well, you give me more answers than I can ask, really. Maybe just some reflections, because when I want to ask something, you even started to ask that thing. Maybe just small reflection. Sometimes when I'm listening all this thing, sometimes it seems to me that it's me and I understand what are you talking about, because sometimes I think I was born with it, but mm, but sometimes I think that this way is very easy way. This way it is a trying to run away from responsibility, or it is a way to run away of taking responsibility, of make a choice. Do you think so or not? Because if consciousness is not believed to me, yes,
Is not what to you?
okay, consciousness is not belong to me,
Oh, I see. Yes, correct.
correct? So, okay, so what is it relationship? Can I take a responsibility for my life of or choice or my can can I influence to my life if consciousness is not believed it belong to me?
Well, stop right there. The consciousness that is conscious right there is the only kind of you there is. Really. That's 100% of you. So there really isn't another you to say, it's a very good question. And we all, these kinds of things come up all the time. Naturally, they should. But there really isn't another self to say, there's the consciousness up there, over there, wherever, that's consciousness. And then there's a me that it doesn't belong to. That which is saying there's a me, really, that's just a temporary personality. That seems to be you, just like there seems to be a Peter here, but that's not the real you. And that consciousness, by the way, we're going in this talk so far, we've gone into very deep water in some ways, and yet there's so much more that could have been said along the way that addresses points just like you raised, because they're very valid points. But the consciousness that is conscious is one. It's whole, complete. It's not, and it cannot really be related to what we term whole or complete in the human scene, in human everyday living, because it's not like that at all. It's purely spiritual, but it is still one. It is still whole. It's complete. It's we could say perfect health, because it's not physical or material. It can't get ill. It doesn't have body parts that can get hurt. It's always, maybe a better term is, it's always well. And it's also abundant, but that's not human dollars or euros or anything like that. It's an abundance of consciousness, of vitality, of spirit. It's wealth in that regard. But that's at that level, that's all there is. And it's also wisdom and intelligence. So when one is living as that, as sincerely as one can, one is not going to do anything to hurt another, because there's really, you would just be hurting yourself, because there's an awareness like, okay, there's one body here and there's one body over there and that body over there. But where those other bodies appear to be, that's really the same I. That's the same life that can say I is there where that body appears to be. My physical senses fool me into making it appear as if there's something separate there. But when you break it down, there really isn't. There's the same one presence there. And it can't do anything to hurt itself. It not only, it's not that it wouldn't do it, it doesn't even have the thought to do it. And if, as we were saying earlier, if one has responsibilities, maybe a family to raise, or just use that example, maybe elders to take care of, parents and so on. Some people, I admit, some people maybe will say, because they're just doing it intellectual, they know some spiritual ideals, they'll say, oh, there's only consciousness, I don't have to worry about them, let them work it out for themselves. Those kind of things don't happen. There's a sincerity, and again, kind of a living from the oneness. If I have, bills to pay, you got to pay the rent. Well, there's only one life, so I don't have to pay the landlord. Who's he? Doesn't belong to him either. Things like that. You play the role in the human everyday life, almost like an actor on stage, but you do it with really from the highest in every way. And that's not to say that what the things you describe, that happens sometimes. And it's unfortunate that people get pulled into, acting in those ways. And it's really not their fault. They just don't have the spiritual awareness or the spiritual clarity to see through that behavior and say, oh, wait, no, that's not going to help me any if I act that way. Whoop, sorry.
I think the internet, I don't know, is weakening. You're breaking up a little bit, Peter, but
Okay.
maybe it's a sign to draw to a close, because I don't want it to break up anymore.
Okay.
And I just wanted to ask if there's anything you wanted to share with the listeners in terms of any retreats or any new things that's coming out that you.
I don't have any retreats at the moment. I do one-on-one sessions with people if they want to. Those are on the website, which is consciousnessisall.com. And it just comes to my thought now, if anyone is interested or wants to investigate, the website for Alfred Aiken's work is called HillierPress.com, and that's HILLIER press.com. And they're having a sale now on his lectures and talks. If I don't know if most of your audience, Iwan, is in Europe, but they also sell quite a few books. but the postage for the book to send it to Europe these days is more than the cost of the book.
Yeah, yeah.
But they do have several ebooks that can be, downloaded instantly, and then some of his 2-hour talks and 1-hour talks too. So if they just want to, test the waters, so to speak.
Sure. And I'll put the link in the description as well.
Okay, thank you very much. They would appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope you continue to rub our noses in it, Peter. Because it's been a gift, and continues to be a gift.
Likewise, thank you very much for the opportunity to do this. This is nothing of, could be more enjoyable.
Oh, super. Thank you. Lovely to
Likewise.
meet you.
Yeah,
Take care.
you too, Yuan. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.